Okay, good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today. Today we're joined by Brighton Hove Albion sports writer Frankie Elliott and Sussex World columnist Ian Hart, and we're going to go through the Moises Caicedo transfer to Chelsea, which was finally confirmed yesterday after quite a long summer of negotiations. Frankie, we'll come to you first. Albion said they didn't think anybody would hit their valuation, but it turns out two teams did in the end, but Chelsea got the deal over the line.
Yes, they did. It finally ends a saga that's been rumbling on for I'd say about 2 months now. I think a British record transfer fee. It was going to have to take that for him to be sold. It seemed the record would have to be broken. I didn't think it would be broken because I felt Chelsea weren't willing to pay that much. But then I think that the fact that you've got to thank Liverpool for why it has Brighton have received this sum and why Chelsea have finally got their man, because it took that bid on late Friday afternoon of around £140 million, as we believe, to really kick Chelsea into gear. Because I think what Liverpool realised and Chelsea finally realised is how valuable or how vital a player Caicedo will be to their team. We saw it. Funny enough, we saw it on Sunday. They obviously Chelsea and Liverpool faced off against each other, and it was very clear a player like Caicedo was needed in both teams. So after all the sort of negotiations and squabbling and not agreeing on a fee, I think what's finally happened is a quality player has moved to a Big Six club. And after all the talk about how he's behaved or what he's wanted and all this negotiation that's been going on, we've got to remember that Chelsea have signed a brilliant player. They've signed a really brilliant player and one of the most exciting midfielders, I think, in European football. So it's a great move for him. It's a great move for Chelsea. And actually, it's turned out to be a brilliant move for Brighton because they've received so much, a heck of a lot of money for just this one player.
Yeah. Would you agree with that, Ian? Would you say Liverpool's input into this was key into getting this deal over the line?
I think Liverpool have been used as a patsy. I think it's been. It was bizarre. I was in the press box for the Luton game and then in the press lounge, and we were talking with some of us old uns have never seen anything like this in our lives, and I've been supporting the Albion 50 years, and we've seen players come, players go, quality players go, but they've always acted with a little bit of dignity and a little bit of integrity. I firmly believe that Caicedo's agents got Liverpool into the mix just to get Chelsea going. He had no intention of ever going to Liverpool, but it was a necessary part of the whole drama played out. I don't know how widely it was reported, and you two guys have got your finger more on the pulse than an old one like me. Didn't Caicedo say at some point that he'd agreed to join Chelsea in May?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. That was that was one of the quotes.
Call me old-fashioned here, lads. Call me old-fashioned here. But when you sign a contract, is talking to another club when you're under contract to another club, is that not breach of contract? Is that not behaving in a manner that's required by your contract? I mean, I don't doubt that Caicedo is one of the greatest players that's ever played for our football club. I'm not sure he's as good as Mark Lawrence, only time will tell. Profit margin wise, I think it's the biggest ever. Yeah, because I keep going on about Lawrence. Profit wise, it's 2,445% profit, which is a world record in itself. 4.5 million 2.5 years ago to 115 million. Nice work if you can get it. Take a bow, Tony Bloom. Take a bow. But it does leave me with a bad taste in my mouth that we are moving in waters unfamiliar by us Brighton fans, that people behave like this. Maybe I am naive. Maybe I am old-fashioned. Liverpool was never an option, but he had to bring them in to the mix to actually push buttons.
Yeah. Has it changed, do you think, Ian, just purely because of the vast sums of money that's involved these days?
I think it's madness. I think it's absolute madness. That we've got, I don't want to sound like Michael Foot, but we've got all these food banks in Brighton and Hove, and then we've got players moving for this kind of money. I know it's the world over. I do wonder, and I've put in the column that you kindly put online, Derren, on Sussex World, two things.
Yeah.
Hope for Chelsea's sake he doesn't turn out to be a Steve Daly, which younger people will have to Google, who was the record, British record in 1979 when he went from Wolves to Manchester City. And he ended up going out and playing in the North American Soccer League within 2 years. And I hope when the Saudis come calling in 12, 18 months' time, Moses and his agents don't get their heads turned yet again. It is what it is. Brighton have come out of it well. I know when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, I did want it done. I felt it was a distraction going into the Luton game. And at least we now clear the decks and we go to Molineux on Saturday in the knowledge that VAR hate Wolves more than they hate Brighton. So we can look forward to hope building on that Luton victory. Look, the Luton game was superb, but I do think that that it was not preying on RDZ's mind, but I think it was a distraction. And I think now it's out of the way, we can get on. I'm sure Tony's going to let him spend some of this money. Who he spends it on, that's the exciting part, because clubs will know that we are a keen buyer now. I know that sometimes pushes the price up, but there's a number of people that we look at. But it is exciting times. The king is dead. Long live the king. Brighton players will be. Yeah. Let's just hope we don't have this with Matoma in 12 months' time. But we just have to move on. But as a Brighton fan, not just as a football writer, but as a Brighton fan, part of this has left a nasty taste in the mouth, especially in light the Players' Awards 2 weeks ago, where he won the double award. We didn't quite have the Gwyneth Paltrow's at the Oscars with the weeping, but we had this lovely heartfelt speech, which was all basically BS, because he'd agreed to join Chelsea in May.
So it looks as though the deal had been agreed for a while, and I think in a way it does suit Brighton, though, doesn't it? There has been talk, and Caicedo did say a few things apparently at the awards, but overall it is a deal that suits Brighton. But just looking at the contract, Frankie, it seems as though it's an 8-year deal for him, and also Brighton have negotiated a clause in the contract that there is a sell-on fee, so that if in a few years' time he does go to Real Madrid, which he stated previously as his dream move, or as Ian mentioned, Saudi Arabia. It seems quite a shrewd move from Brighton to add that clause, or to add that into the contract, into the deal.
Yeah, I think they've as always in most transfer negotiations in the last couple of years, Brighton have come out as the winners. And they've always and funny enough, they're always the selling club, but every time it seems that they seem to get out with the better deal. If you look at the fact that this time last year when Brighton were kicking off their Premier League season with McAllister and Caicedo in their midfield before the World Cup, before this Europa League qualification and FA Cup semi-final, if you would have said that they would have got nearly 150 million pounds, initially, and it could still go higher for those two players, everyone would have everyone would have taken that in a heartbeat. And I feel even within that deal, so the £100 million is great for Caicedo, but then on top of that, as you say, if he is sold further down the road, then Brighton still benefit again. It really is a wonderful deal, because we know how Brighton prepare and plan for things. They knew that Caicedo was going to leave from about January onwards. They've prepared for this. They've got a plan in place. We imagine they will sign probably one player before the end of the window as a midfielder, They've already got a number of midfielders in place already. Pascal Gross and Mo Dahoud started the game on Saturday against Luton. They've got a manager in place who is very happy. He said on his press conference on Friday that he's already moved past Caicedo. He's already looked past it. So they've already planned and prepared for Caicedo to leave. And it looks like they've done it pretty effectively in terms of the playing style, and ability of the team is still very, very high. But then on top of that, they've got, a brilliant deal in regards to the financial rewards of selling Caicedo. So they have managed this whole thing brilliantly, as they always do, as we'd expect. But this is their most high-profile sale of all time, and yet again, Brighton have come out, for me, as the real winners. Yeah,
business-wise, it's a great decision, isn't it? But you can't deny it's a huge step back in terms of team building and the quality of the player in the middle of the Brighton midfield, isn't it?
It is, but like I said, the key thing is it's not a shock to them. Like I said, I think it's been frustrating maybe for Caicedo and certainly for Chelsea how long this deal has taken to get over the line. But I think, as I said, on top of the fact they've probably been preparing since January, it's given them this whole summer to prepare for him leaving as well, both on the training pitch and in regards to recruitment. I feel that this Carlos Baleba that they are linked with from Lille, I reckon that deal is going to be pretty much completed by the end of this week. I think from their standpoint that will do. They will see their midfield department as sufficient, and they will feel that they can compete still at the highest level with the midfielders they've got. But at the same time, the brass tacks of it is that none of them are Caicedo, and Caicedo was a fantastic player. He was pivotal to where Brighton got to where they did last season. But he is only one player. That's how Brighton will see it. They will have sold players. They have sold players in the past when we felt that would be the end of this brilliant Brighton side. So I feel that they will see that in the same way with Caicedo. So it feels like a step back, and I would have seen it as a step back if he was sold in, say, June or possibly early July. But the fact it's come in the middle of August, I think that Brighton feel they're ready to move on from him now.
Is he going to fit into that Chelsea midfield nicely, would you say, Ian? Is he a player that's going to do well at Chelsea?
I don't support Chelsea, so I mean, I've got mates who do. As Frankie said, it's great that the money's come through. Well, just
a few Chelsea fans a few Chelsea fans think the fee's far too high, don't they?
Yeah, well, because they've had Cucurella, haven't they? So they've been here before, 62 million. Could I remind you though, Frankie, that it was read in back in Jan because he wanted to go to Arsenal. But he loved Arsenal according to Instagram back in January. The only thing that concerns me is a lot of young, talented players in the Brighton squad will have seen Moses behave like this, or Moses' agents behave like this, and I hope they don't think that's the norm. I hope they don't think that's how we behave, because he hasn't really. We got the money. Chelsea have got a great player, and he probably will go on to be the greatest player Ecuador have ever produced. But by the way he's conducted himself right back for the Instagram post before the Liverpool game, and now the revelation that he'd agreed to join in May, bringing Liverpool in, as we've said, he hasn't really covered himself in glory. The upshot is, and the end product is, Albion have got this excellent fee. I just hope other young players, talented players at the club with agents who probably aren't as scrupulous as they should be, will look and think, well, this is how we get out. But it's the water. John Bain, Attila the stockbroker, spoke about his Albion goldfish, but he didn't like the water it was swimming in. We've got to get used to it. These are the waters that we swim in now. We just have to move on. This guy at Lille really excites me. What's happening with the Kudos thing, Frankie? Do we know?
Gone quiet,
is he not coming now?
Well, last week, Brighton reportedly agreed a fee with Ajax for Kudos, but he hasn't been able to agree personal terms for whatever reason. They gave him a 48-hour window to agree personal terms with Brighton. That 48-hour window passed without any personal terms being agreed. So it looks like that deal is pretty much dead in the water. And West Ham now look more like the likely club for Kudus to join. He seems to be more keen on a move to the Hammers. Personal talks are apparently going a lot better, but a fee is yet to be agreed in that deal. West Ham haven't actually made contact with Ajax because they're waiting for Lucas Paqueta to join Manchester City for around £98 million. So if that deal goes through, Kudus will then go to West Ham. That doesn't seem to be, like I said, that I would imagine that would have been the player they would have brought in for Caicedo if that was in an ideal world, but obviously that hasn't worked. So Belba is the man they're bringing in. But just going back to what you said, Derren, for Chelsea and Caicedo, it's the perfect match because Chelsea are desperate for a sort of a number 6, as they say nowadays, or a central defensive midfielder. Caicedo is one of the best at that. Like I said last year, he probably was the best in the league in that position. It allows them to play Enzo Fernandez further forward. It allows Conor Gallagher to play a bit further forward. Obviously, they were the two that played in that role on Sunday and did well, but didn't have that sort of
they need that protection, don't they?
Protection. And that defensive nous and that ability to break up counter attacks, which is what Caicedo does so effortlessly, and is also a brilliant player on the ball on top of that as well. So all of those qualities that we saw for Brighton last year, he is what Chelsea needed desperately in that midfield. I think they've needed it ever since Kante became very injury prone, and I feel like Caicedo can fill those shoes effortlessly, to be honest with you. So it's a great move for him, and I'm sure it's what Liverpool need as well. And I feel they'll be kicking themselves that they haven't been able to bring in a player of Caicedo's quality.
I think they will. But every transfer is different, isn't it? And everyone is complex in different ways. And this one, if you compare and contrast to the Alexis McAllister transfer, which seemed McAllister conducted himself perfectly, got his move in the right way. The agents behind Caicedo and how this was done, it was chalk and cheese, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, I think you've also got to look at, every deal is different. Every player is different. McAllister is a lot older than Caicedo, not, by 2 or 3 years. He's also been at the World Cup and been surrounded by a lot of, excellent pros, obviously Messi being one of the greatest players of all time, but people like Otamendi, Angel Di Maria, these are experienced professionals that have played in European football for a long time. If I'm being honest, I'm sure he asked them for advice while he was out there about what his next move should be. And I'm sure they gave him some very sound advice on how to behave and what to do. And that's why we saw McAllister act in the way he did. Caicedo being, moving across at such a young age to the UK from Ecuador, playing obviously in the Ecuadorian league before he came to Brighton, only 21 years of age when all these rumblings came about of him, moving to Arsenal or Chelsea in January, just signed to one of the biggest agents in South America, and also with a lot more potential than McAllister. I think the McAllister thing, you've got to remember, was quite a surprise to a number of people, his rise into being a player that could play for Liverpool. I think before the World Cup, a number of people would have said that Liverpool wouldn't be interested, truth be told. So that came out of the blue. Whereas Caicedo, I think, has always been seen as the next big thing to come out of South America. Yeah. And so that attracts a lot more of the sort of stories we have seen, which is agents chasing a big move, chasing big money, because obviously they can make a lot of money out of deals like this, and speaking a lot more openly in the press about Caicedo wanting to leave. So that's why we see the differentials. But at the end of the day, if you look at Caicedo's performances on the pitch, that's never faltered. I think as much as all the noise that surrounds this move and whether Caicedo wanted to move and what he said and what his agent said, all of that stuff never affected him on the pitch. And so, although both deals ended in different ways, I think you've got to remember that both McAllister and Caicedo gave everything for Brighton from the first kick of the ball in August last year right up until the start of end of May of this year.
Yeah. Do you think McAllister will be remembered more fondly, Ian, just purely because of the way both exits were achieved?
Yeah, almost certainly. And we talk about Caicedo giving his all for Brighton. Yeah, in the main he did. He did obviously have to have some time off when we played Liverpool in the FA Cup after the Instagram post. Obviously, what fans don't realise is that Brighton don't get all the 115 million. I see it's reported that his former club Independiente de Valle, they received $29 million after his transfer fee to Chelsea. And that's more than their stadium cost to build. And they're going to build a training centre, which they're going to name after him. So, it all drops down the sort of
down, doesn't it?
pyramid. Look, they'll both be remembered with a degree of affection. They'll both be remembered for taking part in, to date, the best season the Albion have had. Hopefully this season will be better. But at the end of the day, we're all different ages. We've all been, some of us have been around the block a few times, Albion-wise. You can't paper over the cracks. There are things that have gone on here in the last week or so that we've never seen at the Albion before. Sadly, I think we're going to see them again, and we've just got to get on with it. But it is disappointing. But as I said, the king is dead. Long live the king! And the time this recruitment production line keeps moving, we're fine. I mean, Adinga, what a great player he's going to be. Came on Saturday. We've got
6
Ferguson.
million.
I thought Pedro, apart from his early miss, where it would have been easier to have scored, I thought Pedro looked at absolutely different class, and that was probably only him in second gear. I'm so excited at the prospect of seeing him and Ferguson playing up front together. Far more positives than negatives. All power to Tony Bloom, but he is a poker player, and that's his job. And he's played this. He's played Chelsea well and truly, and so we've got what we wanted. But I'm sorry, call me old-fashioned, but there are certain aspects that do leave a nasty taste in them.
A nasty taste,
a couple of beers, and the taste goes, doesn't it?
Just looking at that business, it's almost about 250 million profit Brighton have made on their last 10 players. It's amazing how Brighton are doing this, aren't they? We've seen it in the past where other clubs have had this approach to the transfer market, likes of Southampton and Leicester. But Brighton have taken it to the next level, haven't they? It's really impressive how they're dealing with the club. And when you look at where can Brighton go from here, you look at the likes of Newcastle, Arsenal, and Tottenham, Man City, all huge backing. Chelsea, huge backing. Brighton have to work in this manner, don't they, to compete at that level?
They do, and I think one of the key things, as you said, about the model that Brighton use is that they keep on coming back stronger. From when they got promoted to the Premier League under Chris Hughton, every season they've got better. But with every season, a bigger player has left the club for a bigger sum of money, and you feel, especially when someone like Graham, the whole coaching staff and head coach in Graham Potter and his staff left, in October time last year, you really felt this must be the one that finally knocks them over, and yet again they finished even better than they did under Graham Potter under Roberto De Zerbi. So it feels like it can go on forever, and obviously there is a slight glass ceiling to it by the fact they're competing against clubs such as Chelsea, who have spent close to £1 billion almost now in the last year and a half, and Arsenal spent over £100 million on a player this summer. We know about the backing of City and United, and I would also argue that Liverpool are in there as well, because they were going to break the record until Chelsea came and swooped this deal at the last moment. So all these clubs are being backed with the hundreds of millions of pounds to spend, and Brighton obviously don't have that, and so there is a slight feeling that this won't last forever. Of course there isn't, but I always think the most important part about this is the fact that they've got one of the best managers in Europe right now. Roberto De Zerbi has created a side that can compete against the very, very best, and I think he feels that even he can do that without people like Caicedo. Obviously, it'd be a lot more difficult, but he still feels that there is a chance that Brighton can compete with the very best with this squad working under him. And I think as long as they have people like him, as they did with Graham Potter, I think as long as the coaching is there, Brighton can still very much compete in the top 10 of the Premier League despite selling all these players. I think once you don't get that same level of manager running the ship, obviously that's when it can slightly fall apart. But because of that, I feel that it doesn't matter who they sell. They're so good at their recruitment. They're so good at the coaching side of it. That means that they're ready for anything, basically.
Yeah, De Zerbi has, hasn't he, Ian? He's brought an identity to this team. Any player that comes in, they know the style of play that they're going to have to adopt under this manager. It's really impressive what De Zerbi has done, isn't it, since he's arrived?
Well, it's basically off the stratosphere, because he's turned good players into great players. He's put his arm around Solly March and turned him into a different player from what we saw under Graham Potter. Just going back on what you said there, Derren, we do have to be careful. We do have to keep moving forward. The two clubs that you mentioned, Leicester and Southampton, where are they now? So
that's the danger, isn't it? Yeah.
Very, very aware of that. I think the probably, and again, it's my Brighton and Albion bias showing through. I think the difference between Southampton and Leicester and Brighton is we have a Brighton fan at the top of the tree.
Yes.
We have someone with a Brighton pedigree, who's already left us with a legacy even before he's even thought about going. And I think all the time we've got that, I think it's great, and I think we will have that. And and this recruitment thing, obviously the recruitment people will change, but if the ethics of what they do in their recruitment stay the same, it'll be fine. RDZ, and I probably before when I was on with you, is the greatest manager we've had so far ever. I don't think anybody gets near him. As you know, Derren, being my editor, I wasn't a Potter fan. Potter, as Albion manager, Brighton don't get anywhere near Europe last season. I think RDZ has gone to the next level. What we've got to do is we've got to keep him happy here. And it's not just about finance, it's about lifestyle. But ultimately, you can see him at the top of Serie A at some point, one of the big Italian giants. But let's enjoy it while we can. And the good thing about the recruitment is, as we found out when Potter left us, Brighton are almost like chess masters. They're 2-3 moves ahead. They know what they're doing. So I'm sure they've got a short list for the next Brighton manager anyway. They know that if RTZ came into the launching training tomorrow morning and said, I'm going to be the next manager of Italy, Mancini's gone, Brighton would know they would go for, and they would get someone in within 36, 48, 72 hours, as they did when Graham Potter left. So it's just great times. We just move on to Wolves. Really exciting times.
Yeah, so a good 3 points in the opening day, even though all this Caicedo distraction, Frankie. Yeah. It doesn't seem to be affecting them on the pitch, does it, at the moment? I know there's going to be bigger tests to come. Luton aren't going to be as intense as some of these, top games where they may miss the likes of Caicedo and McAllister. But it's still the best squad Albion have ever had in their history, isn't it? There's so much to look forward to for the Brighton fans this season, even after Caicedo's gone.
Absolutely. And as I said, you've got to look at the recruitment from this summer as well. They brought in 5 players, I think, at the moment. It looks like it's going to be 6, and all of them, are ready to compete in the first team. We saw James Milner start on Saturday. We know about his qualities, and he showed them, I felt, in that Luton game. Mo Dahoud, let's not forget he was wanted by Pep Guardiola less than 5-6 years ago when he was Manchester City, when he first became Manchester City manager. So there's clearly a quality player in there. Obviously, it's not quite happened from at Dortmund, but he was slotted in effortlessly into that midfield role that McAllister played last year. He looked very comfortable playing in the Premier League, and obviously has the technical skill to compete in this league. So that's another great addition. Yeah. João Pedro, how exciting is he? Another one. Obviously he was the record fee that Brighton have spent, but You can see why. He gives them a new edge in attack with his speed and athleticism, and obviously that quality there as well. So those are just the first three. We've still got Igor Julio to come into the side as well. That's I think a great addition to the back line. Obviously Bartford Bruggen will be competing with Jason Steele for the number 1 spot, but it felt that with those 5 signings, you forget about Caicedo and McAllister leaving, because still on top of that, Mitoma, Solly March, Danny Welbeck, Evan Ferguson, one of the most exciting young strikers in Europe. You almost forget about McAllister being a Brighton player because of all of those, all those quality players that are still there, and all of those additions that have been brought in. So I think they've really played a part. Sorry,
Billy Gilmore as well. He didn't start, did he, against Luton? I thought he was going to be one of the first names on the team sheet this year. Were you surprised not to see him start, Ian, against Luton?
Well, yeah, because RDZ had said what a great player he was, but I think he's sort of slowly catchy monkey. I think we're going to see a lot from Billy Gilmore this year, and exciting times. It's like you say, I actually think for Luton's sake, we probably played him at the right time. If we take Luton on in November, December time and play like we played, we could have 7 or 8, 9. Sadly, I think it's going to be a long, hard winter for Luton. I don't think they'll do a Derby County and get 11 points, but I think it's going to be tough. And again, it shows that gap between the Championship and the Premier League. And again, all power to his elbow. Chris Newton guided us through,
that really sticky period. Very true.
When we came up, and then moved us on. We wouldn't be where we are now without Chris, basically, full stop. So, the RDs, the Caicedo thing, was it hanging over us? Wasn't? I don't know. Everyone was talking about it, but I think 4-1 flattered Luton. Should have been 4-0 anyway, because it was never a penalty. But again, VAR lets the Albion down, but it let Wolves down last night. So, but look, it's exciting times. And when you've been to the likes of Rochdale and Oldham and Exeter City, I can assure you I'd much rather be where I am now.
Much rather be. Yeah, that's it.
As fun as it was in League or Division 4, Division 3, even Division 2 and the Championship, we're at the top table now. You talk about those bigger clubs. I don't think, sadly, we'll ever be able to compete with them weekly wage-wise or transfer fee-wise. But I would say that the firm foundations that we're building with our recruitment, Brighton will be a top 10 club for many years to come if things carry on as the way they are.
Yeah.
And
good
thing, the one good thing that Tony Bloom has said on record, we are going to win a trophy soon. He's promised us. He said that at the cup final reunion dinner, we are going to win a trophy soon. So,
well, fingers crossed is for this season. But I agree. I think the way Brighton run their club is the only way they can do it and still compete. There's no way you're going to compete financially with those top clubs, and they are doing the best that they can with the resources, and by having great organisation, great succession planning all the way through from top to bottom. I think it's the only way you can be in this sort of top 10 of the Premier League, I think, at the moment. But but just a quick one looking ahead to Wolves. So Caicedo's gone, but how do you see that going at Wolves, Frankie, just before we go?
Yeah, I mean, you would expect it to be a tougher test than what they faced against Luton. I feel that Wolves played obviously very, very well on Monday night against Manchester United, and many felt, including myself, that they at least deserved a point and probably actually the victory from their performance. But it was the age-old problem with Wolves, as they couldn't score. And they don't have many clinical finishers in their team. So I feel that this is going to be a problem throughout the season for Wolves. I feel coming up against a very, very good Brighton side, will not help that. So I, as much as I feel Brighton will be more tested, because there are some very good players in that Wolves side, especially in that midfield area. They were much the better team on the ball last night than the United team that was assembled for a lot more money. But I still feel Brighton will come up probably as 2-0 victors.
Ian, would you agree with that? 3 points?
Yeah, Frankie, full on, son. I've gone 2-0 in my Super 6. So I think it'll be the momentum will gather momentum from the Luton game. As you say, he who we will never refer to again is gone. The money's in the bank, we can move on and just go from there. And and it is exciting times, and we're going down. We're sort of counting down to the 1st of September in Monaco, when those balls go in that velvet bag or whatever they do.
The Europa League. Yeah.
And we find out.
And it's the day,
on the 21st of September.
Yeah. So the transfer window closes that day as well.
Yeah. But I think we'll have all our transfer business done.
Yeah.
But as a long-time Brighton fan, that day is etched in my mind, etched in all of our minds, because we find out it is so exciting who we get in that Europa League, who we take on the 21st of September 2023. The stuff of dreams. I mean, if you go back in the Albion history as to who they took on the 21st of September, you'll have the likes of, no disrespect to them, the likes of Exeter, Torquay, Plymouth Argyle, even Bristol Rovers, Frankie. But you'll look, and then we could be playing AS Roma at the Amex Stadium on that Thursday night. Exciting stuff.
Yeah,
exciting.
No, there's so much to look forward to, and catch up with all the rest of the transfer window talk, and as we look ahead to the Premier League and the Europa League campaign for the coming season at sussexworld.com. Thanks for joining us,
Can I just ask
go
Derren, can I just ask you two for some advice before I go?
We'll do our best.
The club very kindly gave me this when I supported them for 50 years, but I've got a signature on here, Moises Caicedo, 25. How do I get rid of it? Tipex or because it's really, it's something I never want to refer to him again, so I don't really want him on my wall, do I?
Wow, you could sell that for it's his signature's over 100 million.
No, it's that's going on my grandson's bedroom wall. Once he's had the nursery redecorated, so good stuff.
Is that all the
Thank you for having me on, gentlemen. It's the Manchester City game, which was the FA Cup semi-final, as was on the 23rd of April. That should have been my 50th anniversary of supporting the club.
Oh, wow.
So then I went for that game. The club presented me at the Man City game with that shirt, signed by everybody. But no, look, good times. Because that's the other thing, is that whilst it's all going superbly, it's all going swimmingly, the club is still our football club, and they never forget where we've come from. And all the time we do that, we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's easy to forget when you're doing multi-million, £100 million deals, competing in Europe. It's from where they've come from. It's when you're talking about things like that, it's amazing, isn't it? So,
yeah.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Ian. Always great to have you on, and thanks again, Frankie, as well.